Hey guys, welcome to API testing using Postman interview question and answer set 1. In today's session, I will cover first set of 25 real-time interview question and answer for API testing using Postman. So what is API testing? In software application development, API is the middle layer between the presentation and the database layer. API enable communication and data exchange from one software system to another. API testing is software testing practice that tests the API directly from their functionality, reliability, performance to security. API testing effectively validates the logic of the build architecture within a short amount of time. Applications frequently have three layers: the data layer, the service layer or the API layer, and the presentation layer or the UI layer. The business logic of the application guides to how user can interact with the services, functions and data held within the app is the API layer. API testing focus on analyzing the business logic as well as the security of the application and data responses. An API test is generally performed by making requests to one or more API endpoint and comparing the response with the expected result. API testing is a type of software testing that analyzes an application program interface or API to verify it fulfills its expected functionality, security, performance and reliability. The tests are performed either directly on the API or as part of the integration testing. An API is the middle layer code that enables two software programs to communicate with each other. The code also specifies the way an application requests services from the operating system or other application. API testing frequently automated and used by DevOps, quality assurance and development team for continuous testing process or practices. So primarily there might be few layers, right? And sometimes the UI might not be ready. Okay, but still we can proceed the testing which is called the API testing. So it is an introduction between the two layer, right? So primarily there can be three layer. One is the UI layer, one is the database layer, and one is the data layer or the API layer, right? So your API layer will interact between the UI and database layer. In case your UI is not ready, still some sort of testing can be proceeded to raise or to identify the defect early. So that way API testing is very useful, and through API testing we can uncover early defect, and definitely it will cost, right? It will save the overall software development, software testing lifecycle cost. What is the API testing processes? So in the diagram you can see there are 5 processes, right? First is API specification review, where user will review the API specification and use case documentation from the test perspective. Once the review is done, then test specification development will happen, where, right, the test condition expected result for each test case will be added as part of your script. After that, test framework will be developed, where user, right, different tools will be used like SoapUI, JMeter to develop a set of static resources. After that, test case development will happen, where coding of test scenario, creating sanity check, test suits, right, the surveillance of the test suit will happen along with the bug, along with the code fixing or the debugging, right? And then in the last step, test execution and reporting will happen, where, right, the user will try to run the test suite or the test cases based on the required specification, and it will generate the different result or reporting, and the report will be published to the respective stakeholder. That way API testing process consists, right, or work. How to approach API testing? An API testing process should begin with a clearly defined scope of the program as well as full understanding of how API is supposed to work. Some questions the tester should consider include: what endpoint is available for testing, what response code are expected for successful request as well as unsuccessful request, which error message is expected to appear in the body in case it is an unsuccessful request. So that are the different questions testers should consider while they are finalizing the approach for the API testing. Once factors such as these are understood, tester can begin applying various testing techniques. Test case should also be written for the API. This test case define the condition or variable under which tester can determine whether a specific system perform correctly and respond appropriately. Once the test case have been specified, tester can perform them and compare the expected result to the actual result. The test should analyze response which will include reply time, data quality, confirmation of authorization, error code and HTTP status code. API testing can analyze multiple endpoints such as web services, database or web user interface. Testers should watch for failure or unexpected input. Response type should be within an acceptable agreed upon limit, and the API should be secured against potential attack. Tests should also be constructed to ensure user cannot affect the application in unexpected way, that the API can handle the expected user load, and that the API can work across multiple browser and device. The test should also analyze the result of non-functional tests as well as including performance and security. Where are the key benefit of API testing? So there are several benefits is there, like earlier testing, easier test maintenance, faster time to resolution, speed and coverage testing, language independent, GUI independent, improved test coverage, right? So we'll discuss one by one. So as part of earlier testing, what is covered as part of earlier testing? So with API testing, once the logic is designed, tester can build to validate the correctness in response and data. User do not have to wait for various teams to finish their work or for full application to be built. Test cases are isolated and ready to build immediately. Then easier code maintenance. UI are constantly changing and moving around based on how they are accessed, browser, device, screen orientation, etc. This creates a nightmare scenario where tests are being constantly written to keep up with the actual code in production. API changes are much more controlled and infrequent. Often, API definition files like OpenAPI spec can help make refactoring test only second of work. Then faster time to resolution. When API tests fail, users know exactly where their system broke and where the defect can be found. This helps reduce time triaging bug between builds, integration, and even different team members. The small isolated footprint of an API test is perfect for faster MTTR stats, a valuable KPI for DevOps team. Then speed and coverage of testing. 300 UI tests may take 30 hours to run. 300 API tests could be run in few minutes. That means user will find more bugs in less time while also being about to fix them immediately. The language independent. Data is exchanged by XML or JSON format, so any language can be used for test automation. XML and JSON are typically structured data, making the verification fast and stable. There are also built-in library to support comparing data using this data format. Then GUI independence, this is the very most important benefit for API testing. API testing can be performed in the app prior to GUI testing. Early testing means early feedback and better team productivity. The app core functionality can be tested to expose small error and to evaluate the build strength. The improves test coverage. Most API or web service have specification allowing user to create automated tests with high coverage, including functional testing and non-functional testing. Then why is API testing is very important nowadays? So user interface tests are often inefficient for validating API service functionality and often do not cover all the necessary aspects for backend testing. This can result in bug left within the server or unit level, a costly mistake then can greatly delay the product release and often require large amount of code to be rewritten. So API testing allows developer to start testing early in the development cycle before the UI is actually ready. Any request that does not produce the appropriate value at the server layer will not display it on the UI level. This enables developer to kill at least half of the existing bug before they become more serious problem. It also enables tester to make requests that might not be possible through the UI necessary for exposing security flaws. Many companies are using microservices nowadays for the software application because they allow software to be deployed more efficiently. In one area of the app is being updated, the other area can continue functioning without interruption. Each application section has a separate data store and different command for interacting with the data store. Most microservices use API, therefore, as more business adopt the use of microservices, API testing will become increasingly necessary to ensure all parts are working correctly. API testing is also integral to agile software development, in which instant feedback is necessary to the process flow. In agile environment, unit testing and API testing are performed over GUI test because they are easy to maintain and more efficient. GUI tests often require intense network reworking if they want to keep pace with the frequent changes in an agile environment. Overall, incorporating API test into the test-driven development process can benefit engineering and development team across the entire development lifecycle. These benefits are then passed along to customer in the form of improved service and better quality product. What are the common API testing type? Right, there are several types including unit testing, validation testing, UI testing, functional, non-functional, load testing, right, UI testing, penetration testing, and file testing. So API testing typically involves the following practice: unit testing, testing the functionality of individual operation; validation testing, it focuses among the final step and play an essential role in the development process. It verifies the aspect of product, behavior, and efficiency. In other words, validation testing can be seen as an assurance of the correct development. UI testing, it is defined as a test of the user interface for the API and other integral part. UI testing focuses more on the interface which ties into the API rather than the API testing itself. Although UI testing is not a specific test of API in terms of code base, this technique still provides an overview of the health, usability, and efficiency of the app's front and back end. Functional testing, testing the functionality of broader scenario, often using unit test as building block for end-to-end tests, includes test case definition, execution, validation, and regression testing. Load testing, validating functionality and performance under load, often by reusing functional test cases. Runtime error detection, monitoring an application the execution of automated or manual tests to expose problems such as race conditions, exception, and resource leak. Security testing include penetration testing and file testing as well as validating authentication, encryption, and access control. Web UI testing performed as part of end-to-end integration test that also cover APIs enables team to validate GUI item in the context of large transaction. Then interoperability testing, checking conformance to web service interoperability profiles. Penetration testing, considered the second test in the auditing process. In this type, user with limited API knowledge will try to access the threat vector from the outside perspective, which is about functions, resources, processes, or aim to the entire API and its component. Fuzz testing, massive amount of purely random data, sometimes referred to as noise or fuzz, is forcibly input into the system in order to attempt a force crash, overflow, or other negative behavior. This is done to test the API at its absolute limit and serves somewhat as a worst case scenario. Then what are the API testing best practices? So API test cases should be grouped by this category. On the top of each test, users should include the declaration of the API being called. Parameter selection should be explicitly mentioned in the test cases itself. Prioritize API function call so that it will be easy for tester to test. Each test case should be self-contained and independent from dependencies as possible. Avoid test chaining in the step skip development. Special care must be taken while handling on-time call function like delete, close window, etc. Call sequence should be performed and well planned. To ensure complete test coverage, create API test case for all possible input combination of the API. What are the key API testing tools available in the market? So while performing an API test, developers can either write their own framework or choose from a variety of ready-to-use API testing tools. Designing an API test framework enables developer to customize the test. They are not limited to the capabilities of a specific tool and its plugin. Tester can add whichever library they consider appropriate for their chosen code platform, build unique and convenient reporting standard, and incorporate complicated logic into the test. However, tester need sophisticated coding skill if they choose to design their own framework. Conversely, API testing tools provide user-friendly interfaces with minimal coding requirement that enables less experienced developer to feasibly deploy the test. Unfortunately, the tools are often designed to analyze general API issues and problems more specific to the tester's API can go unnoticed. A large variety of API testing tools is available, ranging from paid subscription tool to the open source offering. Some of the specific example of the API testing tool includes SOAP UI. The tool focuses on testing API functionality in SOAP and REST API and web services. Apache JMeter, which is an open source tool for load and functional API testing. Apigee, a cloud API testing tool from the Google that focuses on API performance testing. REST Assured, an open source Java specific language that facilitates and eases the testing of REST API. Postman, a Google Chrome app used for verifying and automating API testing. Catalan, also an open source application that helps with UI automated testing. Swagger UI, also an open source tool that creates a web page that documents APIs used. What type of bug API testing can detect? So for each and every testing there is an objective, right? What are the different type of defect or error or bug you can detect? Similarly for the API testing, you can just find out the mentioned bug and mention the PPT, right? Fails to handle error condition gracefully, unused flag, missing or duplicate functionality, reliability issue, difficulty in connecting and getting a response from API, security issues, multi-threading issues, performance issue, API response time is very high, improper error or warning to a caller, incorrect handling of valid argumentative values, response data is not structured correctly JSON or XML. So these are the different type of bug API testing can detect easily. What are the key challenges of API testing? So for any kind of thing in the world, right, there will be some challenges, there will be some cons, right? Similarly, API testing is also having some challenges. So main challenges in web API testing is parameter combination, parameter selection and call sequencing. There is no GUI available to test application, which makes difficult to give input values. Validating and verifying the output in a different system is little difficult for tester. Parameter selection and categorization is required to be known to the tester. Exception handling function need to be tested. Coding knowledge is really required for the tester. What is the test environment of an API? Setting up the API test environment is not an easy task. The test environment of API requires the configuration of the database and server. Depending on the software requirement, no GUI is available in this test form. So when the installation process is complete, API is verified for the proper operation. Throughout the process, the API called from the original environment is set up with different parameter to study the test result. What are the principles of an API test during API testing test case design, right? The five most important principles of an API test design are: setup, where you will create the object, start services, initialize data, etc. Execution, steps to apply apply API or the scenario including logging. Verification, oracles to evaluate the result of the execution. Then reporting, it can pass, fail, block, all this stuff. Clean up the pre-test state. What are the procedure to perform API testing? So these are the different procedure you need to follow, right? So you need to choose the suite to add the API test case, choose the test development mode, demand the development of test cases for the required API method, configure the control parameter of the application and then test condition, configure method validation, execute the API test, check test report and filter API test case, arrange all API test cases. What must be checked when performing API testing? During the API testing process, a request is raised to the API with known data. This way, user can analyze the validation response. While testing an API, user should consider the accuracy of data, schema validation, HTTP status code, data type validation, order and completeness, authorization check, implementation of response timeout, error code in case API return, and non-functional testing like performance and security testing. What is the difference between API testing and unit testing? See, unit testing is primarily conducted by the development team, whereas API testing is done by the QA team. Unit testing is a form of white box testing, but API testing is a form of black box testing, where right you no need to run through with much coding knowledge, right? Unit testing is conducted prior to the process of including the code in the build, whereas API testing is conducted after the build is ready for testing. Source code is involved in unit testing, but source code is not involved in API testing. Unit testing, the scope of testing is limited, so only basic functionality are considered for testing, whereas in API testing, the scope of testing is wide, so all the issues that are functional are considered for testing. What are the difference between the API testing and the UI testing? So API enable communication between two separate software systems. A software system implementing an API contains function or subroutine that can be executed by another software system. On the other hand, UI or the user interface testing refers to testing graphical interface such as how user interact with the application, testing application element like font, image, layout, etc. UI testing basically focus on look and feel of an application. What are the common protocol used in API testing? Many protocols that are used, right, can be accessed by the many protocol are there that can be used in the API testing like JMS, REST, HTTP, UDDI, and the SOAP. What are the architectural styles used for creating an web API? HTTP for client-server communication, stateless communication, simple UI as the address for the services, XML or JSON as a formatting language. What is API in Java? So Java also, right, in case you want to work with the Java, right, there are so many methods, so many kind of interfaces, right, so many classes available. So API in Java refers to Java API, which are classes, interfaces part of the JDK, which is used for developing Java based application. Is API software? API is not a software but rather just an interface to provide data exchange and functionality among different software application or process. As API provides access to data and functionality, it can be thought as software which fulfills user need. For example, authentication service provided by Google to different websites for one-click login. What is an API gateway? API gateway acts as a gateway or single point contact for various API based services. It optimizes requests for different API. It can route, optimize, and provide simple interface for data and the functionality access instead of accessing multiple API, like authentication service provided by Google to different websites for one-click login. How user can test the API security? So for testing the security of API during API testing, user need to validate two things: authentication and authorization. So authentication, whether the identity of the end user is correct or not, you can validate. Similarly, through authorization, whether the user has access to the resources or not, you can validate. User can also check whether the TLS or the SSL certificate used over the HTTP protocol is valid or not. What is TestAPI? TestAPI is a library of test and utility API which are essential for developer and tester for creating testing tools and automation tests. TestAPI provides common type of data structure and algorithm. What is API framework? So any kind of thing, right? Framework will be really required. Otherwise, you will be wasting so many time, and your work will not be fruitful. So API framework are code institution that contribute commonly used functionality when establishing user own web application programming interface. Explain everything about warning and API error. When something is not going as per expectation, like when the outcome is not as predicted, then the occurrence of error can be seen, and the same warning are explained in the form of a message in proper format. Within a single module, there can be one or many warning. So that's all 25 interview question and answer from for the API testing with Postman. So I'll be creating a recurrent session like close to 150 question and answer I will try to publish in few days. Just go through the playlist, go through all the video. You can definitely learn, right, all the different questions whatever will be asked in the interview, and once you go through all the question and get the good confidence, then you can easily clear the interview. Thank you.